Hello everyone, and welcome to my talk on catastrophic collapses of sensitive species, including the quiver tree, Aloidendron dichotomum, following fire in the arid Nama-Karoo, South Africa. My name is Justin Du Toit, and I'd like to recognize my collaborators on this project, who are Lorraine van den Berg, Manette van Lingen, Victoria Goodall, and Tim O'Connor. Here are two maps of South Africa. The left-hand map shows fire occurrence during 2019 in October, and the right-hand map shows rainfall. And we can clearly see that the more arid it gets, the less likely fire is to occur. Our study took place where that orange star is, near the town of Prieska in the Northern Cape, where the rainfall is between 200 and 300 millimeters per year. We're going to focus on the quiver tree, Aloidendron dichotomum, formerly Aloe dichotoma. It's a plant about 3 to 9 meters tall. It's a tree succulent. It has a lifespan of about 250 years. It shows episodic recruitment in response mainly to rainfall. The seedlings, when they germinate, require moisture and shade to take hold and recruit. The plants can be eaten by livestock, other indigenous mammals and insects. It's prone to illegal harvesting, and another problem it faces in the wild is wind throw. In other words, can be blown over. If we look at the right-hand map, we see that the Prieska site is right to the right-hand extreme, the most easterly extreme of the distribution in South Africa. What are the general effects of fire in the Karoo? Fire is a very unusual event in the Karoo. What we find is that grasses generally survive. They manage to resprout after the fire, as do some dwarf shrubs, but other dwarf shrubs are killed by fire. And the ones that are killed by fire are often species that have the ability to become locally dominant. Two examples are Eriocephalus erycoides, Kapokwos, and Ruschia intricata doringvoggie. On the left-hand side over here is a picture of a fire near Hanover in the Karoo, and this road stopped the fire. This is what the veld on the left-hand side looked like before the fire, and on the right after the fire. So the fire essentially converted this shrubland into an arid grassland. How do aloes in general respond to fire? Well, some aloes can actually survive fire. This is because of a shroud of dead leaves that grows around the stem that provides protection to the stem, even though they get burnt. And on the left-hand side, there's an example of that, an Aloe brumii near Middelburg in the eastern Karoo that got burnt but survived. Fire response in quiver trees has not been reported on that we know of, but it is expected because of their bare bark and lack of protective leaves that they would be intolerant of fire. Our rationale and questions. There was an accidental fire near Prieska in the northern Karoo in 2017. Fire is very unusual in these environments, and we suspect that this fire was anthropogenic in origin, owing to the extensive mining of the semi-precious stone tiger's eye in these hills, and there are numerous examples of campfires and so on that the miners make. The site is in a quiver tree forest, as it's known. This is a local population of quiver trees with a relatively high density. Our questions: what was the effect of fire on the vegetation in general? Second, what was the effect of fire on quiver trees in particular? Third, what is the prognosis for vegetation at the site? And fourth, what does this mean for other quiver tree populations? Site description. There's a picture of the site and how it looked. On the left-hand side it is an unburnt region. On the right-hand side is where it was burnt. It's in the Nama-Karoo biome, veld type called lower greep broken veld. There are some savanna species as well, for example, Acacia areoloba and Boschia albatronca. In the unburnt area, the total canopy cover was about 38%. It was dominated by tussock or tufted grasses, which was 5%, Euphorbia, mauritanica, about 5%, Rygosum trichotomum, a shrub, about 4%, Clania longiflora, about 4%, and Pensia spinescens, about 3%, in addition to occasional quiver trees. In the picture here we can see a quiver tree. There we can see a euclid, behind it we can see a euclid crisper tree. There's a recoppicing shrub at C. D are unburnt Euphorbia plants. E is a dead quiver tree stump. And F, that rocky area, is an abandoned mining pit. Here's some pictures: the succulent Euphorbia mauritanica, the shrub Rygosum trichotomum, the succulent Clania longiflora, and the dwarf shrub Pensia spinescens. Field methods for botanical composition. We had 12 sites, and at each site there were 2 treatments, which was burn or unburned. We estimated the canopy cover of all species in 2 by 2 meter quadrats, 5 in the burnt area and 5 in the unburnt area at each site. For the quiver trees, we had 9 burnt sites and 2 unburnt sites, a total of 11 sites. Within each site we measured all trees. We measured the tree basal diameter along 2 axes, and we also recorded whether the tree was alive or dead. If we look at the rainfall history of the site, left-hand graph shows rainfall typical of an arid area, very up and down, and we also see that for several years before the fire, rainfall had been below average, and for the several months before the fire as well, it had been 0. The right-hand graph shows that according to the SPI, Standardized Precipitation Index, it was indeed experiencing a drought. So how did a fire manage to burn if it was a drought and there was no grass? Well, we found significant evidence at the site of senescence of the succulent species, as shown on the right-hand side there in that picture, and we surmise that this provided the necessary fuel load for a fire, and it was in a way therefore a sort of perfect storm where drought had rendered succulents flammable. There were conditions of hot and dry drought conditions. There was a unnaturally high incidence of ignition sources from all of the people that are mining tigers eye and lighting campfires and so on. And also most of the fire took place on steep slopes, which would support the rapid spread of a fire. Looking at the overall vegetation response to the fire using a canonical correspondence analysis ordination, burning significantly changed composition. Burnt vegetation was much lower in diversity, or had a much lower variation, and all burnt sites were quite similar. Canopy cover was only 11%, down from 38%. That was after 2 years. At the burnt sites, the composition was primarily grasses and Rygosum, the shrub that coppiced, and that comprised 80% of all of the cover, and there were occasional other species. The dominant shrubs, the Euphorbia, the Clania, and the Pensia, those had all been extirpated or killed out. There's a picture showing the unburnt section on the left and the burnt section on the right. Looking at the response of the quiver trees themselves, well, the tree density in the area was 100 plants per hectare. These ranged in diameter from 2 to 98 centimeters, with a mean diameter of 21 centimeters. In the unburnt areas, 92% of the trees were alive, and in the burnt areas, only 8% of the trees were alive. The few trees that did survive fire were shown to be only partially burnt. In other words, the fire didn't actually burn the bark all the way around the stem. However, many of them are expected to die. On the left-hand side is a graph showing a mixture model, and it shows the population comprising several discrete-sized classes. This indicates a healthy pre-fire population with clear signs of episodic recruitment. Here's a picture of a burnt quiver tree up on the side of the mountain. On the left-hand side, the tree. On the right-hand side, how that tree over the many years had grown over the rocks. That tree is now dead. these photos show similarly sized quiver trees before and after the fire. The one on the left in an unburnt area, and you can also see the succulent understory. On the right hand side, that understory is gone, and all that's left are a few grasses. In the background are some dead quiver trees too. In conclusion, therefore, we can say that fire has certainly had a catastrophic effect in this environment, and it has shifted the vegetation from a diverse Nama-Karoo to a type of sparse arid savanna. And the dominant species and also the quiver trees have been nearly completely extirpated. And fire has also created an inhospitable environment by reducing the shade and nurse plants necessary for future quiver tree populations to establish. Albeit on a small scale, the agricultural potential of the burnt area has been reduced to essentially zero, and the prognosis for the site appears relatively poor. Maybe we'll even see, or others will see, the scar or the effect of the fire maybe in 100 years' time. We would anticipate that the effects would be similar in other areas were they to burn, and we wonder if in a changing world with an increasing population and increased climate variability through climate change, we wonder if the incidence of such catastrophic events may increase over time. That's the end of my presentation, and all that remains is for me to thank you for your attention. Bye-bye.